Welcome back to Women's Voices, KPFZ 88.1 on your FM dial. Today, we will have a special guest. We are a call-in show, and let me give that number out. It's 263-3435. And always remember that what you hear coming out of our mouths is our opinion and our opinion only. It does not represent the station or anything else, not even necessarily what the rest of the people on the panel are. So first we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Kay Vohren.
I'm Julie Lewis.
Lenny Mathews.
And would you please introduce our guests?
I will. This is Rachel Robison. She is the project director of Community Care HIV/AIDS program for Lake County and Mendocino County. And Rachel, if you'd please take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk some about your program and have some more questions for you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today. So I'm the program director for the Community Care's HIV/AIDS program, both in Lake and Mendocino County. And we have a variety of services in Lake County that we offer, and in Mendocino County we're a little more limited. Do you want me to talk about myself professionally?
Please.
This is
Talk about yourself. What got you to Lake County?
Well, it's a good story. I'm actually a Lake County native. My family came here in the early 1800s and helped to settle the area in both Lakeport and in Kelseyville. So, in fact, my great-great-great-great-grandfather was a second Superior Court judge, and his image is actually hanging in the Superior Courtroom in the courthouse. So,
oh, my goodness.
I have long-standing roots here. In fact, if you go to the cemetery on Bell Hill Road in Kelseyville, it's like a big family reunion. So I grew up here, and I went to school in Lakeport and graduated from Clear Lake High in the 90s. And then I moved away for 17, 18 years and studied a variety of things. I went to school at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo and double majored in literature and dance. And then I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and studied dance there and worked as a dancer and choreographer in New York. And then I came back to California and had a family and got my master's degree in counseling psychology. And I'm a registered marriage and family therapist intern. And then I decided to come back to Lake County because I felt it just worked out really well. And I'd really like to come here and use the experience and education that I've gained in other places to contribute to the wealth and well-being, the health and well-being of my county of origin.
You brought your successful, experienced self back to the county. How wonderful. That is so great.
We don't very often have a native on this program. Almost always our guests are from some other place, as we are.
I know, but you went off and all of your accomplishments and experience and your degrees, and then came back to, be able to make a difference here in the county of origin. I congratulate you and thank you for that.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
It's wonderful. So, Rachel, what you say marriage and family counseling, what got you into the HIV and AIDS program?
Well, so in San Diego is where I'm most recently relocated from. In 2011, I moved here from there. In San Diego, I was working as a marriage and family therapist trainee for the YMCA's program, seeing high school students at San Diego High School, which has the same population of Lakeport, which is kind of interesting. Uh-huh. But I did a lot of, my specialty in San Diego County was to work with the LGBTQIA community, and I was a board member for GLSEN in San Diego, and we were working very actively with the San Diego Unified School District to create and implement an anti-bullying policy school district-wide in San Diego to specifically address gender and sexual variance. And so when studying psychotherapy, which I did in Santa Barbara County, my focus was gender and sexual variance. So in San Diego, I did a lot of community advocacy and education on working with sexual and gender variant folks therapeutically, and also did community advocacy and sat on discussion panels and put together proposals to address the mental health disparities of sexual and gender variant folks. And so there's a lot of overlap with professionals that work with the LGBT community and professionals that work with the HIV/AIDS community because of the origins of the viral epidemic really hitting the gay community very hard. So there's a big overlap there. And that experience kind of led me into working with HIV/AIDS.
That's wonderful.
Let me put this out real quick. I downloaded a couple of being a lesbian and the impact when I was living in Guerneville when AIDS came along back in 83 I believe it was. Women have been affected with HIV and AIDS since the beginning of the epidemic, as we know. And today, women account for 1 in 5, 20% of new HIV infections, women. And very seldom is it discussed, heterosexual women. And mostly women of color, particularly black women, and have been especially hard hit, as we know. Majority living with the disease, newly infected, are black women. Overall, a quarter of the people that are affected are HIV are black women today, facing challenges, socioeconomic, structural poverty, cultural, sexually violent, within their own situations. It's so much different from an LGBT community settings, and it's seldom addressed. In the U.S., particularly, women of color remains a critical issue, and the trend is so much different. Kay's got some information on that one too.
I think you kind of covered some of what I have, but today in the United States, there are 1.1 million people living with AIDS, and of that number, 24% of them are women. And that percentage keeps climbing up a little bit as we go. Women accounted for 20% of newly diagnosed cases in the year 2010, and 21% of the newly diagnosed cases in 2011. So we're seeing about a 1% jump on those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I did want to ask Rachel about the demographics, but before we do that, why don't we talk a little bit about what your organization does, and then we can kind of come back to Lake County and see where our people here fit in.
Sure. So our organization does slightly different things in Lake and Mendocino County because of our funding sources, but our more expansive programs and services are here in Lake County, so I think I'll just focus on those.
That's great.
Question, do you see women in that program?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
You do?
Oh, yes. We have HIV positive women that live in Lake County and Mendocino County. We do
participate in the program?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. And some of them have kids and are the caretakers for grandchildren. And
okay.
They're all heterosexual or bisexual, as you know. The amount of people that identify as lesbians, they don't account for very many HIV infections. So never mind. I was going to go in. I have a tendency to go into facts and figures, so any little thing will lead me to that about percentages and infections. So I have to stay focused on this. So what our program does here in Lake County, we have community care as a general organization. Is we do case management and provide support services for frail people. And the term frail is kind of funny, but we define it as someone who needs extra support and services in order to live at home with the highest level of functioning and the highest level of dignity. So someone who's at risk of needing to go into an assisted living facility or a nursing home. So community care as an agency has a bunch of programs to assist, the at-risk population. And so our program is for folks that have HIV/AIDS and that also have a high level of physical or psychological needs. So not everyone living with HIV/AIDS is fragile and frail. I don't want to give that kind of thing at all, but our programs specifically focus on those that need level care. So we provide nursing and social work case management for those folks that qualify for our AIDS Medi-Cal waiver program. And then for other folks that have a larger income or that are not Medi-Cal eligible or that have a higher level of functioning, we have Ryan White funds that come from the federal government through the state, and we have an HIV care program. So we give them nutrition vouchers, and we also give them mileage reimbursement vouchers for medical visits or psychosocial support visits for folks that have an HIV diagnosis, but there's no income or medical requirement to be in that program. And then we also have this fabulous drop-in center So anyone in the county that has an HIV/AIDS diagnosis, or their care providers or family or friends, or people that have lost someone with HIV/AIDS, or people that are, affected by this virus, we welcome them to come and utilize the services in our drop-in center. We have activities, support groups, potlucks, crafting groups, and then for folks with an HIV diagnosis living in this county, we also have a food pantry. So this is exclusive for the use of folks with HIV, and they're allowed to use it, as an as-needed basis. And we have a wonderful group of volunteers that are compiled of clients and non-clients that are now running the food pantry. So when you come in to use a food pantry, there's a high, we treat you with the respect as a consumer, and you're greeted with some volunteers, and you get to make out a little shopping list, and it's really great. And then again, in the fall, we do the Lake County AIDS Walk, and that happens in the city of Clear Lake at Austin Park. And this year it's going to be September 14th, which is a Saturday. So then we also do harm reduction, education, and outreach in the community. So we're the primary agencies that goes to other community care providers and schools and different colleges and talk about, how not to get HIV, what HIV is, what it isn't, how you can get it, how you can't get it, ways to prevent it, ways to get tested, that sort of thing.
What age do you start that?
What age do we start that? Well, I think it's discretionary, but I know that at the age of 12, you can consent to have an HIV test in the state of California.
In the school system, what age do they begin to do an education?
I don't know that the school system has any particular curriculum about sexually transmitted infections or not. That's not my expertise, so I don't want to speak on behalf of any of the school systems or I know that they do sexual health education classes in middle schools.
Okay.
But we're not tied in to any of the schools. The times that I've been able to go to the schools have been at high schools, and it's been for kind of specialty programs to get volunteers. And I don't specifically talk about sexually transmitted infections and preventions at schools because they need parental informed consent and releases as far as I know. So when I've gone to talk about HIV/AIDS, I talk about it from a cultural, societal thing, not like a sexual health perspective, because that's not appropriate. And then I also talk about getting high school students to volunteer with our clients and then to volunteer with AIDS Walk in different activities.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, and that is a lot of the community really doesn't understand, have a distinction between HIV and AIDS. And so if you can discuss that a little bit for us. And then as far as what goes on with the schools, of course, for many years we've had this abstinence only dialogue, which is really quite ridiculous.
Which we know doesn't work.
If we think, let's think about it. Okay, where are when are the hormones running highest? But and I did some research on my own some time ago, and this was from a book from 2001, and at that time. They had tested between 11 and 14-year-olds, and nearly 50% of boys and girls had some form of STD. Most of them were chlamydia or gonorrhea.
Oh, geez.
But that's between 11 and 14 years old.
So
it's really important that even though we have this cultural mindset that, we don't talk about sex with our children, we don't, encourage it, of course not. But being realistic, we can't just say, well, you need to abstain, and that's the way that we're going to deal with this. Children need to be informed about these things just as much as they do about, don't cross the street without looking, that kind of thing. It really has become that critical an issue.
Yes.
So, but Rachel, please, if you would, give us some
to differentiate HIV and AIDS. So HIV is human immunodeficiency virus, and AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And we discovered AIDS first in 1981, and then the HIV virus was discovered in 1983 in a joint effort between researchers in France and the United States. So when you become infected with the human immunodeficiency virus, you then have HIV. It's a viral infection. AIDS is a syndrome. So everyone that has AIDS also has HIV, but not everyone that has HIV has AIDS. Mm-hmm. To have AIDS, it means that you have a CD4 count, and that's a specific measuring of your white blood cell count. It's below 200. And that's kind of the main issue. There's usually other physical symptoms, but it's the CD4 count below 200, which puts you into having AIDS. Right now, once you have a diagnosis of AIDS, you will always have a diagnosis of AIDS. So even though if your CD4 count goes up to 800s because you begin a regimen of antiretrovirals and you become undetectable as well, you'll still always have a diagnosis of AIDS, because I think that thinking, and I'm not a health educator, and medicine isn't my, specific training. So I'm just saying my understanding of it. I come from a mental health professional background, is that once your body gets so, your immune system gets so compromised by having such a low CD4 count and all those things, that you'll be sort of forever not impaired or affected, but it just shows they keep that diagnosis of AIDS to show that someone at some point in their life had an immune suppression and issues that were really poor, and that even though they've recovered, that still happened. I think, does that make sense?
That you had the possibility
that you had at one point in your life you were really ill, and your immune system was really compromised, even if you're better now.
So for women then specifically, how does that affect them, especially if they have, like you say, if it doesn't show in their system anymore, but say they want to get pregnant? Well, how does that affect them?
Even if their CD4 count goes up, and even if they're on ARVs, and so that means antiretroviral medications can allow people to have an undetectable viral load. It means that they still have HIV in their body, but it's not able to copy itself as much in order for you to detect it in the blood. So they get a blood draw and they can't detect any viral copies. So this person still has HIV, but it's suppressed essentially. So a woman now, because of the technology, knowledge, and medications that we have, if a woman who's HIV positive wants to have a baby, that we can that she can take medication so that the baby is not born HIV positive. Now, of course, it's not a 100% thing, but it dramatically reduces the chance of the baby being born HIV positive, and also having a cesarean versus a vaginal birth will also reduce. And then the mother's not allowed to breastfeed, because breast milk is one of the fluids that transmits HIV. So if you do all of those things and the woman's engaged in, prenatal care with HIV specialist doctors, we're lucky because we're so close to San Francisco. They have an amazing HIV prenatal, specialist down there, that most babies now born to HIV positive mothers in the United States do not have HIV. And in fact, a lot of the services geared towards youth that were born HIV positive are going away because there's not youth being born HIV positive to necessitate those services. So that's a really positive thing.
That's great.
And we know couples where one was HIV negative and one was HIV positive that have conceived and produced HIV positive and HIV negative children.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, Lenny, thank you so much for bringing up that this is not just a homosexual or gay issue. This does affect heterosexual people just as commonly, or maybe perhaps not just as commonly, but it is.
Well, it depends if you're talking about worldwide or United States.
And
actually,
I'd like to discuss that.
Dying
please.
from HIV or HIV-related diseases is the number one leading cause of death of women of color between the ages of 15 and 45. So worldwide, it's huge for heterosexual women.
When this first came around, it was called GRID. Remember GRID? Mm-hmm. Yes, gay-related.
Right, right.
Yeah, that was the first, and it was Kaposi sarcoma, and they were going, what's going on with this purple skin lesion that are hitting these gay men,
and the pneumocystis.
And the pneumocystis.
Right. So those are opportunistic infections that we accounted for a lot of the deaths.
And it was called GRID.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But in this country, men who have sex with men still account for the largest percentage of new infections. Mm-hmm. And still, the number of new infections in this country has remained really stable at 50,000 annually for a long time. So we haven't reduced our new infections in this country in a long time. Currently, like I said, men who have sex with men account for the majority of new infections annually in the United States. Just in 2012 is the first year that women as a growing population for new infections have been usurped by Latino and Hispanic men. So just for 2000, not that they account for the majority of infections, but in 2012, they were the largest growing demographic group of new infections. But women, it's still and for a long time, it's been women of color have been the largest growing group, but their numbers have stabilized a little bit, and now we're seeing Latino men.
Yeah. Now, some of the questions I ask you may seem rather redundant, only because we've known about these things now for some decades. However, there is a lot of ignorance still that surrounds these issues.
Yeah.
So if you would go into some of the ways that people can get HIV or AIDS and the ways that they can't.
Well, I'm really surprised. I see people who I've seen videos and at conferences and things, people that are newly infected that are under the age of 30 that still think it's a death sentence, which isn't true. A diagnosis of HIV being positive is not a death sentence at all.
It used to be.
It used to be, but we've had, in 1996 was the first successful medication. It was a type of antiretroviral that was released, FDA approved. And since then, we've had a really high success rate in keeping people alive. And now it's treated more like a chronic condition than treated anything else. And so that's currently where we are in medical technology. There are 5 main fluids there are 5 fluids only that you can transmit HIV. And they are cum and pre-cum, blood, breast milk, and vaginal fluids. And blood and cum have the highest amount of viruses. Like they're more potent. And then the other ones, breast milk and vaginal fluid, are a little less potent.
Okay. And so with the blood,
yes,
because a lot of people have this fear of even touching someone who has HIV or AIDS.
No, so
can you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, and then one of the big things I hear is saliva. So saliva
Yes.
does contain viral copies. That's why we do the rapid saliva test to determine the antibodies for HIV. But saliva does not contain enough in order to pass on the virus to another person. You would have to drink 20 gallons of saliva to consume enough of the virus in order to become infected. So that's one of the big things about, kissing or sharing a glass or sharing a fork. I'm afraid, I don't want to, and it doesn't transmit that way.
Blood and blood products. It's not good to be touching that, but you need a portal of entry.
You need a portal of entry, that's right. And HIV has a shorter lifespan in air than things like hepatitis and other stuff does. So if the blood is dried, everyone should use universal precautions when it comes to handling bodily fluids. But in regards to HIV, it doesn't live long in the air. And it does have to have a portal of entry. So a cut or a wound or a mouth sore or a lesion on your genitals, those sorts of things, that's how we get it into our body, the virus.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for going over those basic that basic information for us. Because
so I have one other kind of a related question. And then how do you prevent getting HIV?
So becoming
from
infected.
Right.
So knowing your status is really, really important.
Prevention, why don't we do that after the break? We've only got a minute, and that's a hot and heavy topic.
So in that minute, Rachel, why don't you tell us how to get to your drop-by center?
So our drop-in
and how
center
to contact you
is on Lake Street in Lower Lake. It's 8050 Lake Street in Lower Lake. It's not far past the cemetery there. And we're open Monday through Friday, 8 until 5. And anybody is welcome to come by and drop in and check out the place. We have potlucks once a month for clients, like I said, their friends, caregivers, and family. And we just got added to the Lake County Quilt Trail. So we're going to be installing our quilt on the front of our building this month.
Ooh. So how about a phone number and an
it's
web address?
995-1606. And we use our Facebook page, which is Lake County AIDS Walk is the name of our Facebook page. And that's a really good way to check out what's happening.
So welcome back to Women's Voices. Today we're talking about HIV and AIDS. And we we kind of skimmed onto a topic, and we knew we only had a minute left, so we're going to go in depth on that topic now.
So talking about prevention to exposure. So there's a variety of ways to prevent infection these days. The female condom, which we like to call the insertive condom, was FDA approved in 1983. So for receptive partners, so heterosexual females and other folks who we call receptive, which is a non-gender specific way, can actually use this is it vinyl? I have one. This barrier method.
The dam.
It's not a dental dam. It's an actual internal condom. So I don't know how people are familiar with this, but if you don't want to rely on your partner to use protection, that if you're the receptive partner, you can actually use one of these internally, and they work for men and women. So some women that are in domestic violence situations with their partner, or don't have the power differential with their romantic partner isn't very good, and they want to protect themselves, but they're concerned that this isn't a topic they can bring up with their sexual partner, they can actually wear these internally.
And are those, you can purchase them?
You can purchase them, and and for young people in this county, we welcome any young person to come to our office and take barrier methods and things that we offer, because we want to.
I think we're being filmed. Open that baby up and let me
Okay,
see it.
so these, they're, if you've never seen one of these,
No, I haven't.
They're large, but they're for men and women. I don't like that they're called female condom, because for if you're the receptive partner, like with male sex, that you can wear these as well and keep yourself safe. So they're like a large, condom that is worn internally, and they're lubricated. And there's a ring inside that stays inside, so it fits. There's a lot of instructions.
I hope.
Yeah, it comes with a big instruction.
You're talking here to two nurses that are going,
I find myself in the bathroom.
A whole
with this-
brochure.
There's a whole brochure. This one, it tells you how to use it. So that's one thing that we can do. We do have, I didn't bring one with me, but there's the dental dams, which are used for oral sex on
I don't
women.
think those are really utilized.
We have our clients do use them.
They do use them.
Yes, because
I'll be darned.
often if someone has HIV, one of their biggest fears, and what prevents them often from having a healthy sexual life, is they're terrified of passing it on to somebody else.
Okay.
And so a lot of our women clients do use them with their partners, because they really, really want to be safe, and they want to keep their partner safe as well.
Okay, the individual who is infected, who is having sex with someone who is not infected, is utilizing the dental dam.
Correct.
Right.
Because vaginal fluid can can transmit the virus. So if I'm trying to read your face. So if I have HIV and I'm a woman and I'm recipient of oral sex,
Okay.
I
no,
can
just
pass it
did
on to my
backwards.
partner.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they have a mouth sore or something, just to be safe, but feeling worried, like I said, feeling worried that you're going to pass this on prevents a lot of people from engaging in healthy sex practices.
The thing, vaginal fluid is minuscule amount of.
But it's one of the five fluids does transmit HIV.
Then you'd have a lot of lesbians that are HIV positive.
Well,
Haven't.
It does transmit HIV, and there's a lot of cultural theories and research about why lesbians. There are lesbians that do have HIV, but it's a minuscule amount.
You'd have a whole bunch more if that was a prominent.
It is
Motive
less potent. It's a less potent fluid than the other ones.
It would
This
be
is true.
comparable, I think, to saliva. Comparable. It would be my guess. We've got a caller that's going to debate this. Headphone time.
Hi there, good morning.
Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, that's
We
quite
are.
interesting how you guys are talking about that, because it seems like that I thought that most people you don't hear that stuff being talked about anymore this day and age. It seems like, especially the younger generation. I don't know, they don't teach that in school anymore, do they? As far as about that stuff.
We don't think it's taught much in school, no.
I don't think it's taught at all anymore. I think that's all gone the wayside as far as education goes. As far as I don't know if you guys are aware, but there was a study done in Africa with the women that were highly active, in the prostitution, and for some reason they didn't understand how those women didn't contract the AIDS virus because of their trade, but they just figured the only way they could figure out that they didn't contract it is because they had so much sexual activity constantly that the constant flow of having the sex seemed to make them immune to it. And I don't know if you've heard of that before, but I heard that on a talk show many years ago of them talking about that. Researchers that were trying to figure out why that was, that they did a study on these women that that were in the sex trade that weren't being affected by AIDS for some reason, like almost immune from just the fact that I guess they figured that the only thing they could figure was the fact that they had sex so much that because women have a way of producing fluids to keep themselves clean and whatnot, and think that those type of women that are active like that all the time somehow are immune to that, that they have constant sex all the time. They don't understand.
Thank you for your call. We'll have our expert here answer that one.
Thanks for calling in. I apologize. I'm not familiar with that study, and of all the current information that's available now, there hasn't. I haven't come across anything that states that. And being that HIV/AIDS related is the leading cause of death for women of color internationally from the ages of 15 to 45 would indicate to me that they can get it regardless of their trade, and it's a huge issue. I'm happy to look into that, but I've not come across that information.
Yeah, and also, caller, for many nations, the government often will control prostitution, and they'll make sure that prostitutes are tested and treated and given preventative care so that they don't pass along diseases and or contract themselves. I don't know if this particular study dealt with one of those in fact or not, but that is the case in many of the nations. So, Rachel, why don't you go ahead and tell us some more about your other products? I see you have a couple of other products.
Yeah, well, as we know, condoms, latex, or other types of condoms, not the natural condoms, though, are really good barriers to preventing HIV. Nothing is 100% effective, but we recommend condoms for everybody because not only HIV, but other sexually transmitted infections. And in Lake County, we have a huge issue with STIs. In 2012, there was a ridiculous amount of STIs reported to public health, and the vast majority. Yes.
STIs?
Sexually transmitted infections. So we don't call them diseases anymore. We call them infections. So instead of STDs, we call them STIs.
When did that change?
I don't know. Sorry.
Shows our age, Lenny.
So things are always changing. You have the vernacular is constantly changing. So we have most of the majority of folks that were reported to public health with an STI in 2012 in Lake County were under the age of 30. So particularly among young folks in Lake County, it shows that, yes, they are having sex, and no, they may not be so informed about how to keep themselves and their partners safe. And if you have an STI, there's a 5%, it increases your chance by 5% of becoming infected with HIV. So it's really important to get tested, and it's important to get tested for HIV, which will, we're going to be starting a rapid anonymous-free testing program that we'll be offering at our location and also at other locations throughout the county once a month, starting hopefully in September. And currently there's no other rapid, anonymous, free HIV testing site that you can go to in Lake County. And so we feel that this is really an important service that needs to be offered to the community, particularly for young folks.
And tell them how quickly they get the
20 minutes. So the test processes in 20 minutes, and it's highly accurate. And the greatest thing that I've been talking to people about the HIV test is that when someone comes in for a test, they're not just getting tested, but they get a counselor sits with them for the 20 minutes that it processes. And so talking about the person's sexual activity and practices, talking about the person's, romantic relationships, talking about other harm reduction or risk-taking behaviors, drug use, and that sort of thing, that we have this wonderful opportunity to sit with someone and talk about kind of intimate details in their life and provide them appropriate referrals, provide them harm reduction strategies, provide them with the information of how not to contract STIs and HIV. So we're really looking forward. We're not expecting that with this testing program that we're going to see a lot of newly infected folks here in Lake County, but we think that the value of the testing program is to also promote health and wellness and safe practices in that 20 minutes that you have with someone when they come in to get tested.
Right, definitely. And so, and what are the numbers here in Lake County? You say that most of the people are under 30, but what kind of numbers are we looking at?
It's It's hard to get exact information about folks infected with HIV because you have people move a lot. So someone may first have been reported and newly diagnosed in one county and move to another county and then move back. And so our numbers, so I just want to say that these aren't 100% accurate numbers, but what we have in Mendocino County, there's reported about a little over 200 folks that are HIV positive living there. And in Lake County, it's a little under 200. And the majority of folks that we see, we have about 92 clients here in Lake County that we see regularly at CCHAP, which is the acronym from Community Care HIV/AIDS Program. And I would say about at least half of our clients are over the age of 45, if not 50, and that probably 50 to 60% are men and gay men, and then maybe 10, 15% are heterosexual men, maybe 20%, and then we have maybe 10 to 15% that are heterosexual women here in Lake County.
So we aren't seeing this in teenagers.
We're not testing for teenagers.
Okay.
So we don't know.
So if you start the rapid testing, then those figures may be more accurate.
And that's the whole thing, that that people get tested for STIs because they're symptomatic, like they have a rash or they have boils or they're itchy or something's coming out. So they'll go into the health department or Planned Parenthood or their primary care doctor and they'll get tested for STIs, but they don't automatically run an HIV test as well.
Okay.
And since initial infection of HIV may be asymptomatic, it wouldn't prompt you to go to the doctor and get tested. And since we don't have you have to pay to get an HIV test in this county. There are sliding scales, and there are some monies available to help folks, but particularly this is a barrier for young people. Someone in their 20s doesn't want to have to give their name, and all the tests in Lake County currently are confidential, which means the information's protected, but you do have to give your name for reporting purposes, and they cost money. So in providing something that it's anonymous, you don't have to give your name, and that it's free, and that it only takes 20 minutes, you don't need an appointment kind of thing, we're hoping that we'll be able to test folks, particularly focusing on young people, because here in Lake County, we don't know. We just don't know. We do have one client who is 19 years old, but most of our clients are older.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said that you do programs with the high schools, but you're not able to actually give them information about this type of thing?
That's not my role. Is not as a health educator for high schools. At the junior college level, I've gone to health classes and that's been very successful. So for high school students, their involvement with our agency is as volunteers, that they either have a group that they belong to, like the CFS, the California Scholarship Federation group at Clear Lake High School. We got some volunteers from them. Lower Lake High School, some of the groups and faculty there let their students volunteer as a nonprofit helping folks. So we engage with them and we give them whatever information they want, but we're not health educators for them, and we don't go into public schools and provide, health education. No, right. But we do let people know that if you're, under 30 and you want some free condoms or something, that you're welcome to come into our office on Lake Street without any questions asked and take them.
Right.
I was involved with running a sexually transmitted infection clinic in Santa Cruz County from 79 to 89 for 10 years. And I also had a teenage son during part of that time. And we gave out condoms and we, tested. It was free testing with the clinic. Mm-hmm. And my son would drag his friends home and say, "Mom, they're having sex and they're not using it." Mm-hmm. I'd say, "Well, send them over." And I'd gave many other counseling session around the kitchen table. And gave out condoms and say, "Here, you got to protect yourself if you're going."
So any youth that come to us are welcome to get information, but we're not, because of parental things. We don't go to them. No, not at this time.
Way back I used to volunteer, and it was underground, but the sheriffs left us alone in Sonoma County. Needle exchange in Guerneville. What about needle exchange?
There is a needle exchange in Lake County. It's called Any Positive Change, and they have a website. You can Google Any Positive Change, and there's a phone number. It's its own agency, so we don't do needle exchange.
But you refer.
Well, yes.
But
absolutely.
You can tell people about it.
Oh, yes. If anyone calls, we know who to refer to.
And how high is the incidence of contracting HIV through blood product, through dirty needle.
I don't have any current
Don't have any.
statistics on how many folks are
Because
becoming
at one time
really
we thought that
infected.
was a pretty high rate of infection.
A lot of our clients have become infected through injection drug use, versus sexual practices.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of our clients were infected 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago too. We have the majority of our clients, over 60%, have been living with HIV for over 10, 15 years. And then we just have like a 30% population who have been living with it less than 10 years.
So your program really provides an improved quality of life for these people.
Absolutely, we try to support them in all spheres of daily functioning. We don't provide direct care, direct nursing, but we can set them up referrals if they need that. We can help them navigate, Medicare, Medi-Cal, Social Security, those kinds of systems. We have case conferences with their medical care providers. We help them if they need medication management. It's just our RNs are one other set of eyes looking over their med list, giving them ideas, checking their blood pressure. And with food and financial assistance, we provide kind of wraparound services. And then we also work really closely with other community care providers. We, are really engaged with the Mendocino Community Health Clinics Incorporated. They have one here in Lakeside and one in Ukiah. We're engaged with Adult Protective Services and Adult Services. We're engaged with the Agency on Aging.
How about
We're engaged
Tribal
with
Health?
Tribal Health. We're engaged with Healthy Start. We're engaged with NCO. We're engaged with all these other folks. So we try to really work. That's the beautiful thing about Lake County is that even for a small rural community, the professionals and care providers here really do a lot of interdisciplinary stuff and work together well.
Yes, I
Work
think-
together really well. Suicide prevention, all these things. It's really amazing.
Yeah, the collaborative efforts are really wonderful, and they make such a difference.
They do. They really make a big difference.
Yeah, I personally, and I put this out there, and I don't know what kind of feedback I'm going to get on it, but I'm in love with the county employees. I'm sorry. I am. I really am. The county employees, I think, are
We have some good folks.
second to none.
Yeah.
Yes, we've got
Some really
some
good
wonderful
folks.
county employees.
So is there anything in particular that you'd like to talk about, tell us about your program, or just discuss in general?
Well, there's an interesting thing that happened last year. So the FDA approved Truvada, which is an antiretroviral medication, back in July 2012.
Called what?
Truvada.
Truvada.
For the use of either post-exposure or pre-exposure prophylaxis. And what that means is that if you feel, so this was a huge deal because it meant what they were approving it the use for. It's been used as an antiretroviral to treat someone who's HIV infected for many years. It's made by Gilead. It's been very successful. But what it's been recently approved for is that if you think that you've been exposed to HIV, that you can start taking it and it helps prevent the virus from you becoming HIV infected. Now, I'm not a nurse or a doctor or scientist, so I'm going to tell you how I think about it, but I don't want to, this isn't medical information. I'm not giving advice. I'm not an authority. It's outside my scope of practice. And it's also been approved for pre-exposure. So if you think that you're going to have a lot of unprotected sex with persons of unknown serostatus, of unknown whether they're HIV positive or negative, that you can take Truvada to prevent yourself from getting infected with HIV.
Is it a one-time shot?
No. So there's a lot of problems with it. So it came out last year and everyone was like, this is amazing. Everyone can take it, or people at high risk, young gay men can take it, this and that. Yes and no. You have to take it every day, and there's serious...
So it's a pill form?
It's a pill form, and there's serious side effects. And if you don't take it every day, it's not effective.
It's kind of like the birth control pill.
And it's not, but the side effects can be pretty hard, pretty difficult. And if you don't take it every day, it's not going to work. And it's not going to prevent you from getting other STIs. And it's not a perfect thing. So some people have, with limited information, have said, well, though this is a cure, we can prevent people like a vaccine, but it's not. So I just wanted to say that although it is available, talk to your doctor and get more information about it, because it isn't a cure, or nor it's not a vaccine either.
We only have 3 minutes, and I have an announcement I need to make before we go off the air.
Okay.
Should I go ahead and make it now?
Make your announcement.
Okay. Anybody that's out there in audience land that has a flatbed truck to utilize as a stage for our rally in Lucerne on the 22nd, Saturday, to get our water company out of our town, give me a call at Lucerne Senior Center, 274-8779. Ask for Lenny. This is a town rally at Harbor Park, June 22nd from 11 to 2. I'm looking for a flatbed truck of some sort as a stage for Denise Rushing, for our Assemblywoman, the Senator, or their representatives, and other ancillary personnel that will be standing and addressing the rally, and hopefully the whole town will show up.
The crowd.
Okay, thank you for your time. Again, the number's 274-8779 on the 22nd of June.
Sounds good. So, Rachel, one more time, if you would go over your contact information and where people can come and see you and or look for information. And also, if you want to just real quickly again tell us about the AIDS Walk in September, that would be great.
So our office is located at 8050 Lake Street in Lower Lake, Suite A. Our number is 995-1606. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And check us out on Facebook. It's Lake County AIDS Walk, all one word. That's our Facebook page. And we post lots of event information and other stuff. And the Lake County AIDS Walk will be held at Austin Park in the city of Clear Lake this year on Saturday, September 14th from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. if you'd like to volunteer, contribute. And we're also, of course, a nonprofit, and we always welcome donations to extend our client services to the folks in need here. So please feel free to contact me, 995-1606.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Thank you, listeners and caller. And Kay?
And
We still have 30 seconds.
okay. 30 seconds worth. You've been listening today to Women's Voices. We'll be back next week with another interesting topic. Denise Rushing is going to be our guest speaker.
Yes.
You've been listening to 88.1 on your FM dial. KPFZ can be heard all around the county pretty much now. I think Cobb is still a little iffy up there. But we are even heard outside of the county now. So.
Thank you for bringing your talent back this direction to the county.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me today. It's been a pleasure.